Welcome to another episode of Lifting the Lid on Technology, your go-to insights for the latest tech and innovation. I'm Barry White, your host and VCIO at SoftSource vBridge. Today I'm speaking to Steve Isles and Andrew Fox from HPE Aruba Networking, along with our own CTO David Small, where we'll continue our discussion on network as a service strategies. Where does the real problems come from, though? Like, what about perhaps the more ad hoc type of devices that come to the network, like IoT devices, or one-offs? Are these areas much higher areas of risk? And where are you seeing the problems, I guess, with some of these technologies? And I guess it some ways relates to resourcing as well. I know, Andrew, we've talked before about resourcing constraints with IT teams. What's your thoughts around that?
Well, I've yet to talk to a customer that has as many people as they would need or want. And so the job of the IT team is growing exponentially to try and keep up with all the different, things that IT are now adding to a business. IoT, certainly from a risk perspective, is high because the devices that you're consuming, think of, printers, cameras, sensors, those kind of things, they're built by companies that make printers, sensors, cameras. They're not built by security companies. So, I'm generalizing a little bit, but, some cases are essentially an unpatched Linux kernel, that is prone to takeover, prone to exploit all of these kind of things. And, once they're sitting on your network, and there's been some amazingly high-profile examples globally of air conditioning systems getting hacked and air conditioning systems having access to point-of-sale devices. I don't know why. There's no excuse for the air conditioner to have access to the point-of-sale. But, once someone is inside your organization, that is a foothold into all sorts of nasty things. So I guess there's a couple of things we need to be doing with IoT, and this is one area where today's networks and things like AI in particular are really helping. But there's a couple of things you need to do. Firstly is not let them near anything that's important. And I guess that sounds kind of self-evident, but it's sometimes harder. We're not just talking about VLANs and basic network security. We're talking about making sure these devices can't see anything that they shouldn't be able to see. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it's re-examining our sort of trust model, the zero trust concept that we're talking about with customers today. Just because this device says there's a camera, from this vendor, and I'm reasonably sure it is because my installers put it in, don't just connect it to the network and then leave it forever. Keep watching how that camera is behaving. And this, as I said, is one area where AI can really help. It says it's a camera, looks like a camera, doesn't behave like a camera, and it's been behaving one way for 6 months and then suddenly one day the behavior changes of that device. Is that an indicator that something nasty's happened? We should go take a look. Those kind of things are great use cases for AI that just help keep us safe. And I guess, as I said before, IoT is more of a area of concern because there's just such a wide variety of devices. We can expect that when, a new version of Windows 11 or a new HP laptop comes out, then it's, reasonably well tested. Mileage may vary. We know that stuff does happen, and we know that every time an Apple iPhone comes out, it's reasonably well tested. But the point about these myriad of IoT devices, they're not all going to be well tested, nor could you if you wanted to. So we need to be setting our organizations up and our networks up to deal with that.
Yeah, because we're seeing that across our customer base where you're getting a device and say like your air conditioner. Why should that be talking out to the internet? Doesn't normally, but it started doing it yesterday. So how do we pick that up? And you're right, that's what we're seeing, that use case for AI to help find those anomalies and bring those up and surface those for teams to look at.
It's actually an interesting use case. The usual reason stated, for an air conditioner to talk to the world is for remote support. That's a common kind of use case. And it's formed the sort of basis of a few discussions, and maybe Steve, you can comment on this, but, the only way you used to be able to provide a engineer with remote support to an aircon unit was either to have the guy sitting on site with his, his keyboard, or to, use VPN or some of the technology to sort of drill him into the middle of your network and give him access and fix the air conditioner. But, potentially, he could get up to other things as well. Maybe, Steve, things are really changing fast in that area, right?
They are. And, and I know it's not the objective of this discussion to get too deep into the weeds, or get into any weeds at all. But, just the very nature of that connectivity piece, VPNs these days, which are fundamentally flawed and unsecured, you get a really highly secure pipe to a network, and then you allow people unfettered access and as if they're connected with a blue cable. I mean, there are fundamental and profound security implications there. With our ZTNA technology built into our cloud security tech, we provide least privileged access to internal users using devices with agents on there that we can control most elements of, or even to external parties without running agents. We provide least privileged access to only the software applications they need within an environment. And even then, they never actually touch a client's network. It's all brokered via our secure cloud environment, and they're only outbound connections. So they're never actually touching a client network. So the security implications there are quite profound the other way. We remove a whole bunch of variables and risk, which is what we're striving to do across the board. Now, the other comment I'll make is the IoT thing feels fairly new to a lot of people. IoT devices exploding, sensors being everywhere, etc. I myself are a huge proponent of it. I've got a house with sensors and things everywhere with an IoT, Zigbee, Z-Wave network and stuff all over the place. And my wife loves telling me when something doesn't work and I've got to go in and fix it because I enjoy it, right? But talking to organizations like Mining Concerns, talking to education, talking to healthcare and others, they're wanting to put together smart tech, smart rooms, smart locks, smart sensors, you name it. And we've seen that coming for a long time because our access points, not only having firewalls built in and the ability to segregate traffic and do a whole bunch of other magic stuff, we can enable IoT networks and smart devices with Zigbee radios. So what does that mean? We're also a trusted partner because we saw the wave coming. We enable IoT technology. We can control and manage it through Central, and we can do that responsibly and securely. So we're not new at this. We've been doing it for a long time. Foxy, how long have we cooked in those Zigbee radios? They've been there for at least the last couple of generations of access points, right?
Correct. Probably nigh on sort of 5 or 6 years now. Yeah.
So we're not new at this. So the IoT thing is incredibly exciting for us and for customers and enables, huge opportunities for us across the board. But we can certainly do it responsibly because, once again, we're not new at this.
So, Steve, you touched on Aruba Central there in passing. For the benefit of our listeners, do you just want to explain what that is?
So Central is our cloud management tool that enables you to centrally manage our wireless and wired networking assets, along with user experience insight sensors, our SD branch technology, all of it, all out of a single portal that's cloud managed and ubiquitously available. It can be enabled with role, based on role. You can have multi-tenanted designs, so you can have an overarching manager and then subsets within, but it's our comprehensive management tool. It's been around for a long, long time. It incorporates things like, AI insights, which are suggestions based on your peer group. We see something is not quite right. Here is a recommendation to fix that thing. So there's already AI insights cooked into it, and they've been there for a while. We've been collecting data points for a bunch of years. We would have hundreds of millions of data points that enable us to make very well considered recommendations using a large language model. And interestingly enough, we're right on the cusp of a Central redevelopment where CNX, the next generation version of Central, is about to hit the market over the next few months. And it's only getting bigger and better. So Central is that core management technology that we've got that is going to serve as the hub for our operations moving forward.
So that's probably a good segue into the last topic I wanted to talk about. today was really future trends in networking security. And I guess you can't get through any podcast like this without mentioning AI at least twice, and I think we've managed to do that quite well.
Foxy did it first.
Yeah, I was going to say that. What can customers expect, and what's, generative AI has sort of been introduced across the security stack. I mean, what are the things we can do today, and you touched on some of the things that are coming shortly.
There's probably a little bit of sort of the low-hanging fruit today. I mean, there's two ways that AI plays inside of networking. The first is AI for networking. The second is networking for AI, right? So let's put aside the networking you need for AI for a moment. That's really not what we're talking about here. But there are a lot of really sensible things we can utilize AI for today to try and get towards that sort of the nirvana of a self-driving, self-healing network. We're closer now than we've ever been in the 30 years I've been in the industry. Part of that is the reason that Steve said, with billion client devices connected to Aruba Central. At the moment, we're about 4 million switches, access points, gateways, Edge Connect, SD-WAN appliances connected, all of which are providing sort of anonymized telemetry. That's an amazing data source for AI. So we got to thinking, what can we do? And one of the things we can do, as Steve said, is take a look at how your network works and what it feels like to be a user right now on that network. Again, the user-centric thing, and then take a look at what else and what other customers are doing and how they set their networks up and how their users having a better experience than our users. Now we could do that as humans, but we're reasonably dumb and reasonably slow, and it would take us a long, long time and a massive project. Whereas with data and the help of AI, we can do that very, very quickly. Hey, Barry, your network's currently set up like this with this setting to this value. We recommend you change that value, to this, and you'll have a better experience, from a user perspective. Where the networks are obviously going is in the end, it'll be, hey, Barry, I've seen this, I've fixed it. If you want to turn it off again, click here. That's where we're headed, and we're closer than ever before. There are a bunch of sort of reasonably easy ways we can use AI for things like natural language search. To know how to drive Aruba Central is great, but wouldn't you rather, rather than clicking 3 times, wouldn't you rather type in, why is my Wi-Fi running slow? Or how is the network performance compared to normal? Those kind of natural language questions make things easier from a customer perspective or from a service provider perspective. All about saving, time and money, needing less people to run a network, or enabling a partner like SoftSource vBridge, who has that capability that you need, enabling them to see and do more, in any given day and to solve more problems on your network. Hopefully before you've actually clocked the fact there's an issue in the first place. It would be perfect.
But also that capability to go back in time and say, hey, what happened at this point, for it to analyze and come back and give you some of the correlation that's happened at that point in time.
Good point. I'm a mad keen Doctor Who fan, so any sort of time travel reference is really exciting. But when your CEO walks in and says, "Hey, Barry, we had a board meeting yesterday at 3 p.m. The network was terrible. Teams fell over. What happened?" And of course, today it's all running beautifully. The IT team, could set up a bunch of things to measure it and then wait for the next meeting and then watch carefully and hope that the problem reoccurs. Yeah, you know how it works. It's a long and tedious process. We have a feature called Network Time Travel, where I can drag the whole network back in Aruba Central back to 2 p.m. yesterday, and it will show me, the state of the entire network, all the devices, what clients were connected, where they were, what sort of experience they were having, what errors they were having, what all those kind of stats look like at that point. And that's extremely powerful from a problem-solving, sort of mean time to innocence perspective, which is what most of our customer network teams are looking for. The fastest time to proving that the issue is not the network. It's probably the DNS.
So, David, how's that changed from an MSP point of view? And looking at, we're on the other end of the stick, I guess. We're dealing with a broad range of customers' environments, and we're seeing the effects of these technologies. How's that impacted our business, I guess, and terms of the way we can respond to these problems and the way we can assist customers, I guess, in being that extra pair of hands.
Coming back to the topic that Steve raised with his conversations with clients, is changing us from being a break-fix organization that you ring up and say the network's not working, react, to this, how do we make sure the network is up and optimal? And I always use a simple analogy of, if the CEO can go into that boardroom for that meeting that Andrew mentioned, and he opens his laptop to join the meeting and it just works, then you've done everything right. And that's where being able to use things like the time travel component of Aruba Central or the AI learning that's in there to bring through that to our teams, then our support teams are going back to the clients and saying, hey, we've seen this happening. Here's the changes we can do for you, which will improve your productivity. And I think that's the bit that people are only just starting to get, is how do we improve that productivity of the end user, because they're the ones generating the money for, or the revenue for the customer. So if we make them more productive for more of the day that they're in the office or out of the office or connected to the network, we're achieving our goal. So
That's a really, really cool example too. I mean, if we think about something as innocuous as going into a boardroom, opening up a device and connecting to a widget, well, we've invoked something that's woken up, joined a network, it's been inspected by a NAC tech, there's a user that might have a cloud security policy assigned that also gets assessed and enforced. They then show up on a dashboard as far as being a user is concerned. Central can see that they exist, and we're making some AI calls based on behavior and other variables. All of that has happened without that user knowing that happened, and it was all completely invisible if we've done our job right. So you're exactly right. That's a really cool example to use. And that is, going back to my initial statements, if that all just happens, then it's transparent, then the scorecard is healthy, and the IT team, they get a pat on the head, they can move on and focus on other more complex things.
the upside to that is that you need to show back to the business that you've done that. So, I think that's the part that people have got, but they haven't fully got out to the likes of their senior leadership or their board, but it's reporting back to say, hey, here's our environment. And I know we get this capability out of Aruba Central, but we can report back, here's the health of the environment, here's what we've been seeing, the productivity of people, the connections and stuff. So it's bringing that back to prove, because if you can't show that value, then people are very quick to forget that it was easy to plug in.
They take it for granted, don't they? They just think it's magic and it's easy. It must be easy. Well, it's not. We're just smart at doing this.
You think about power, it just is there. We turn the switch and it comes on, except for in New Zealand right now where we can't afford a whole lot of power generation, but hey.
Now, I've got one quick question for Foxy, our resident Time Lord. I'd just like you to settle the argument forever now. Tom Baker, number one, right?
Yep.
Always.
Always.
Ah, there you go. You've heard it here to our listening audience. Tom Baker, number one Doctor Who in history. Thank you. We'll organise a prize for him, maybe a sonic screwdriver or something similar.
Nice. Thank you, Steve.
Well, gentlemen, that's probably a good spot to end in. And look, as always, really appreciate your time today. I know you're all very busy, and so I really do appreciate you coming along today. And it'd be great to have you along again sometime in the future.
Thanks, Barry.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
And that wraps it up for part 2 of our double episode with Andrew Fox and Steve Isles from HPE Aruba Networking and David Small from SoftSource vBridge. I'm Barry White signing off. Until next time, keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep lifting that lid.